All right, so today we're looking at solving equations by multiplying or dividing. So we will solve equations by using division property of equality and solve equations by using multiplication property of equality. All right, so the Spirit Club of Weston Middle School is sponsoring a car wash. They charge $5 to wash each car. Let C represent the number of cars. The club washes, and M represent the money the club raises, then 5C equals M. So suppose the Spirit Club wants to raise $120. Write an equation to find the number of cars they need to wash. Well, we could easily put 5C equals 120 because that's the total money that M represents, so 120. And then it says, how can you find the number of cars? Well, that's just 120 divided by 5. Okay? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today and how you would do those types of problems. All right. So solve equations by dividing. So the equation 5C equals 120 represents the relationship described above, or the last slide. The operation involved in the equation is multiplication. To undo multiplication, use division. So just like addition and subtraction, whenever you do something to one side of the equal sign, you have to do it to the other. So for example, in this 1.8 equals 1.8, if we would divide both sides by 2, we still get, the equation is still equivalent because 0.9 would still equal 0.9. And you'll see that you can do the same thing with equations. So if we have this problem here, negative 7x equals 42. We are to graph this, or check the solution after we solve it, and then graph it. So when we have negative 7x, that's like saying negative 7 times x. So to undo multiplication, you use division. So that's what they're doing right here. Negative 7x divided by negative 7. So that'd be negative 7 divided by negative 7 would be 1, or 1x, which would give me just x. And then on the other side of the equal sign, it would be 42 divided by negative 7. One's positive, one's negative, so that gives me negative 6. X equals negative 6. Then we could check it by taking negative 6, plugging it into where the x goes. Negative 7 times negative 6, negative times a negative is a positive. That gives me a 42. 42 does equal 42, so therefore I know that the answer has to be negative 6. So it's very important to check to make sure that you have your negatives and positives correctly. Also, if I'm going to graph, then I just put it on the graph. Okay? All right. So 5C equals 120. That's 5 times C. So opposite is division. So we divide by 5. That would give me C equals 24. And then I simply just take 5 times 24, and 5 times 24 is 120, so it checks. 24 must be my answer. Try A and B, and come back and see how you did. All right, so on A, we would divide both sides by 6, and that would give me x equals negative 9. To check would be 6 times negative 9. Positive and a negative is going to be a negative, and 9 times 6 is 54. So it checks. On B, you divide both sides by 7. A equals 9, and to check would be 7 times 9, and it does equal 63. So A does equal 9. All right. This is just another example of the same thing. We have 4x equals negative 48. So since it's 4x, that's 4 times x. We divide both sides by 4. That gives me 1x. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So that gives me 1x, or simply just x. And then negative 48 divided by 4 would give me negative 12. So x equals negative 12. Then I can take that negative 12, plug it in for x to check. 4 times negative 12 would be negative 48. So therefore, it checks. Okay? So here's a couple that you can practice. So try these, come back and see how you did. All right, so let's see how you did. Divide both sides by 11 on A, that gives you negative 11 equals X, and when you take 11 times the negative 11, you get negative 121. And on 2B, divide both sides by negative 15, you would get X equals 7. To check, negative 15 times 7 does equal negative 105. All right, good. Here's a word problem. It says a drive-through Safari Zoo charges $12.50 per person for admission. In 1 hour, the park raised $675 in admission fees. Write and solve an equation to find how many people visited that hour. So we know the admission fee, which happens to be $12.50. We know the total money raised, which is $675. What we don't know is the number of visitors. So we could use V for our variable. That would give us an equation of 12.5 times V equals 675. We then would divide both sides by 12.5 and we get V equals 54, or 54 people in 1 hour. Okay? Here's one for you to try. An in-state 1-year camping permit of New York State Parks costs $180. If the total income is $8,280, during the first day sales, how many permits were purchased? So try this, come back, and see how you did. All right, let's see how you did. We could say P equals permits, 180 for times each permit, because that's how much the permits cost, equals a total of $8,280. We would divide both sides by 180, and that gives me 46 permits. All right, now we could solve equations by multiplying. So this is done very similar to adding, subtracting, and dividing. Whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you must do to the other side of the equal sign. That's all this slide says, okay? All right, so if I have y divided by 2 equals negative 2, I would multiply by 2, multiply by the reciprocal, okay? So 2. Well, I could do this, I could explain this by saying, putting this over 1 and saying 2 times y is 2y, 1 times 1 is 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, which leaves me 1y. Or I could simplify, and that would leave me with 1y or y. And then 4 times negative 2 would be negative 4, so y equals negative 4, okay? So let's look at this one. We have y divided by 4 equals negative 8. So I'm going to have to multiply each side by 4. That's going to leave me with y equals times 4 would be negative 32. Now to check it, negative 30, not 6. Negative 32 divided by 4 would be negative 8. So therefore, that has to be my answer. Okay? All right, so you try these two, see how you do, come back and check your answers. All right, let's see how you did. So I would multiply both sides by negative 2, and that would give me negative 2 times 7 would be negative 14. When I multiply the other side, I get x. So negative 14 equals x. I can take negative 14 divided by negative 2. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 14 divided by 2 is 7, so positive 7. On 4b, I would multiply each side by 6. And that would give me a equals 72. And then I could check that by 72 divided by 6, which is 12. Okay? All right. Now, on a problem like this, we have negative 5, 6b equals 15. So we would have to multiply by the reciprocal, or the multiplicative inverse. So like here, when you use the multiplicative inverse property, and you multiply two fractions, the fraction and its multiplicative inverse, or reciprocal, same thing, you get 1. So this right here would equal 1. So 1b. And if I multiply it by this side, I have to do this side also. So I could say, I could either go 6 times 15, 5 times 1, and then divide it, or I could simplify before I start. 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 15 three times. 6 times 3 would be 18. One's negative, one's positive, so negative 18. Okay? Let's try some. So we have negative 3/5 x equals negative 6. So we're going to have to multiply this by negative 5/3, the reciprocal. That would give me 1x, or x, and then the other side I have to multiply by negative 5/3. Now I can multiply straight across, and I could end up with 30/3, which is going to give me 10. Or I could simplify here. 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 6 two times. 2 times 5 is 10. And then they're both negative, so that would be a positive 10. And then we could check that. We could say negative 3/5 times 10. That would give me 5 into 1, 2. That gives me negative 6. So therefore, the answer checks. Okay? All right, you try both of these, see how you do, come back and check your answer. Okay, let's see how you did. So 6/7 times m equals negative 24. I would have to multiply by the reciprocal on both sides of 7/6. And when I do that, 6 goes into 6 one time, 6 goes into 24 four times, so negative 4 times 7 would be negative 28. And when I take 6/7 times negative 28, I get negative 24, so it checks. On 5b, I have to multiply by both sides by the reciprocal of negative 9/5. That would give me x, and 9/5, one time would give me negative 9. And when I check it, negative 5/9 times negative 9 would give me a positive 5. So therefore, it checks. All right, if you got any questions, let me know.